Well, good afternoon and welcome to the official launch event for the Military Credentialing Advancement Initiative Report, the future of credentialing of service members and veterans, leveraging partners, policies, and resources. We will be recording today's event, and on Friday, March 12th, we will share a recording of the event along with a copy of the full published report with everyone that has registered. Please feel free to share that email with others in your network as well. So we're going to take a brief look at the agenda before we dive in today. So as you can see here, we have a jam-packed agenda. We're going to start off with a few welcomes from our partners. I will share an executive summary, and then we'll dive in to hear some DoD remarks, followed by a highlight of each of the chapters that appear within the body of the report. And then we'll close off today's session with John Keeman and how you can actually access the report after today's event. So to get us started this afternoon, we are truly honored to have a pre-recorded greeting from the American Legion National Commander, Mr. James W. Oxford. Mr. Oxford was elected National Commander of the American Legion on August 29, 2019 in Indianapolis during the organization's 101st National Convention. He has been a member of the nation's largest veterans organization since 1986. A native of Lenoir, North Carolina, Mr. Oxford is a paid up for life member and past commander of Post 29 in Lenoir. He served as Department State Commander of the North Carolina American Legion from 2010 to 2011. A veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, Mr. Oxford was an aviation electronics technician for the A-6 Intruder and served in Vietnam during his initial enlistment. After being discharged as a sergeant in 1970, he joined the North Carolina National Guard. He subsequently attended Officers Candidate School and transferred to the U.S. Army Reserve, where he ultimately retired as a colonel after more than 34 years of military service. And we are so very grateful for his service. Let's go ahead and hear his remarks this afternoon.
This is Bill Oxford, the National Commander of the American Legion. And on behalf of the American Legion's nearly 2 million members, I'm delighted to be joining you for the launch of this landmark report. Some of the American Legion's best known legislative victories have been in the arena of veteran education, from the passage of the World War II GI Bill in 1944 to the forever GI Bill of 2017. At the same time, the American Legion has developed a distinct legacy in the effort to help former members of the military convert their training and education time into credentials for specialized careers in both the public and private civilian sectors. The American Legion conducted the first systematic study in this area in the mid-1990s. Since then, we forged new pathways for military personnel and veterans to make easier transitions, thanks to our credentialing roundtable discussions, legislative testimony, and 3 highly successful national credentialing summits. In 2017, when I was chairman of the American Legion's Veterans Employment and Education Commission, we produced and released an essential report, The State of Credentialing of Service Members and Veterans, Challenges, Successes, and Opportunities. That 2017 report casts light on the difficulties we still face, some victories along the way, and future opportunities for action to improve the credentialing landscape for veterans. I still strongly recommend this report as an introduction for employers and policymakers to open hiring pipelines for men and women who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. Now, as National Commander of the American Legion, it is my honor to present the next iteration in this effort. The future of credentialing of service members and veterans, leveraging partners, policies, and resources. This new report builds significantly on 2017, and it's even more relevant now as the world of work is redefined by the COVID-19 pandemic. This 2021 report would not have been possible without support from Lumina Foundation, and we look forward to continued collaboration to build better, more equitable opportunities for military veterans and their families. I especially thank our Military Credentialing Advancement Initiative ambassadors who lent us their expertise in industry and academia to craft the recommendations that serve as the report's foundation. We are committed to continuing our work on this important issue, and I welcome involvement of those like-minded organizations and individuals that are equally dedicated to the professional success of our nation's service members and veterans. Brighter days are ahead, thanks to work like this, and we look forward to the time when we can resume our efforts to improve credentialing of service members and veterans together and in person. Thank you.
Well, what a fantastic way to get us started this afternoon. I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Amber Garrison Duncan, Strategy Director at Lumina Foundation. Dr. Garrison Duncan leads a portfolio of work that supports the creation of a system in which student success and credential attainment are scaled up significantly, particularly in community colleges. Her work draws on more than 15 years of experience as a campus-based professional, designing co-curricular learning experiences and leading assessment. Lumina Foundation funded the report, and we are thrilled to have the opportunity to hear their perspective as to why they supported this important project. Amber?
Thank you so much, Lauren, and good afternoon or good morning, everyone. What an honor to be with you today. And it is a privilege to give remarks about a little bit about Lumina Foundation and our interest in the future of credentialing for service members and veterans. So I'll start at the top. If you haven't heard of Lumina, we are the nation's largest foundation focused primarily on post-secondary education and attainment. We have set a goal for the nation based on the employment needs and the labor market demands that by 2025, 60% of Americans are going to need a high quality post-secondary credential that would allow them to access meaningful jobs and work. And so as we think about that goal and have lots of partners in that goal, one of the things that we do is set a reflection for the nation on where we're making progress. So you may be wondering, are we at 60%? Are we close to 60%, given that in just 4 years, it will be 2025. And so I am pleased that the nation has been making solid progress over the last several years, over the last couple decades. We're at 51.3%. So while we've made a lot of progress, we still have quite a way to go. And as we examine the data and the goal of who's completing, we can also see that our current systems of learning beyond high school are producing some unfair disparities. Simply put, higher education has been more successful in serving white traditional age students. There are many opportunities for all of us to improve outcomes for adults and for African American, Latino, and Native American adults. It's a moral imperative, and it's also something we must do together if we're actually going to reach the goal. We have to do this work. And so again, as we looked at as where adult learners of colors are actually learning, we found a direct connection with our nation's military and veteran community. First of all, I personally believe that military education and training is some of the best learning that's provided in the United States today. There are billions of dollars invested in service members who are some of, again, our brightest citizens. We want to make sure that those investments carry over with the service member should they choose to transition into civilian lives and careers from day one. We also know that the diversity of service members and veterans is a strength and a way we can improve completion outcomes, again, for African American, Latino, and Native American adults. For all of these reasons, Lumina made a collection of investments in 2019 to support key actors who were, again, taking action on behalf of this mission. We also branded that collection of investments as the Military Advancement Credentialing Initiative. Since 2019, we have invested over $3 million in these efforts. There will be future opportunities to share additional insights from those other investments, including key pilots that are building stackable credential pathways that apply the competencies and credentials gained in military service towards continued education and employment for service members and veterans. The goal of this work is to eliminate the need for repetition of training that people have already received during their service. Again, and we want to get them credentialed immediately. But today, I'm pleased that today belongs to the Future of Credentialing report. We are proud to support one of the leading organizations on this issue, the American Legion, who has led conversations over the last year to inform the production of the report. I would like to personally thank Joe Sharp and John Kamen for their leadership at the Legion on this work. And I also want to extend a thanks. There are so many names that should be read, but we are not, that would take the whole hour, I think, but every person and organization that has contributed to the report. All of this has been a group effort, again, a collection, and I'm just so pleased and thankful for everyone for all the work that they've done. I also want to thank all of you who are joining for your efforts that you're working on towards Goal 2025, which will ensure that America remains a beacon of economic opportunity. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Lauren.
Amber, thank you for sharing Lumina's perspective as to why the Military Credentialing Advancement Initiative, or MCAI, as you will hear me refer to it throughout the remainder of today's event, is a needed effort to ensure credential attainment is increasing for service members and veterans. My name is Lauren Runco, and I'm Director of Strategy for Solutions for Information Design, or SOLID. SOLID provides policy research and analysis support to government and private sector clients with an emphasis on the areas of education, training, and employment of current and former military personnel. SOLID has specialized expertise in credentialing of service members and veterans that dates back to 1996, when staff members conducted the first formal research in this area that was also sponsored by the American Legion at that time. Since then, SOLID has performed extensive additional research under the sponsorship of numerous public and private sector organizations and prepared the report that we are launching this afternoon, The Future of Credentialing of Service Members and Veterans, Leveraging Partners, Policies, and Resources. I'll be serving as the launch event MC, and as someone working to support credentialing and employment opportunities for service members and veterans for the past 11 years, I am so honored to play a role in today's event. Before I share an overview of the report executive summary, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge that, of course, we had hoped to launch this report in person at a big DC-based event, but COVID had other plans. The Future of Credentialing of Service Members and Veterans, Leveraging Partners, Policies, and Resources is meant to serve as a toolkit for stakeholders looking to replicate the successful credentialing partnerships currently in place throughout the country. Throughout 2019 and 2020, the Legion convened a small group of public and private sector stakeholders and subject matter experts across industry, education, labor, and military. These MCAI ambassadors, as they were called, were tasked with compiling recommendations to support the recognition of military-based learning towards high-quality academic and non-academic credentialed pathways. And everyone met both in person and virtually to uncover models and principles that have been successfully executed across all credentialing stakeholder groups, to in turn inform a report that would share a list of guidelines that support scale and have the potential to be replicated. During the first roundtable, ambassadors identified topics relevant to the MCAI goals, organized them into 5 distinct work streams. Those work streams were then translated into chapters that appear within the body of the report and focus on sharing promising practices underlying each of the 5 areas: public-private partnerships, recognition of learning and stackable credentials, tools and resources that are currently in place to support these efforts, state and federal legislation and policy, and finally, research on emerging issues. Ambassadors leveraged their individual expertise and also interviewed several experts familiar with the topics just listed to gather additional data to inform their recommendations. The report is not a complete or even an extensive catalog of all of the amazing programs underway that do a fantastic job of supporting service members and veterans with attaining a credential. However, the examples shared do provide the reader with an introduction to models that could serve as an example from which to create a new program or even build upon something already underway. The audience for this report is broad: higher education, industry partners, legislatures, government agencies, and the military were all identified as primary audiences for whom the report contents are most directly applicable. but we are confident that others will also find this report to be useful as well. As you can imagine, COVID-19 and the accompanying onset of a global pandemic forced the ambassadors to take these roundtables online and also consider how the pandemic would impact the report findings in the near and long term. What was discovered was that COVID-19 actually made the need for this report even more dire. While long-term change may still be a ways off, there are things we can be doing in the short term to ensure our communities are better prepared to support former military and their families with obtaining credentials and careers that lead to achievable and sustainable economic mobility. Not only is that good for the service member and their family, it's also good for our country as a whole. When a veteran is successful and can continue to make valuable contributions to the community where they live, especially when they can build upon the high quality skills obtained during service, the next generation of servicemen and women can see the positive impact military service can have for them as well. The hope of those who have contributed to the MCAI report is that you review what has been shared and you use this information as a foundation upon which to improve current and future credentialing opportunities. Included within the conclusion of the report are a list of short and longer term opportunities of action that each stakeholder group can take to impart positive change related to increasing credential attainment for service members and veterans. However, that list is only a snapshot of the steps we can and should take to support this effort. Additional research and action are needed to adapt and offer continued credentialing support to service members, veterans, and their families. And we encourage you to spearhead such efforts. Today is just the beginning of this conversation. We look to all of you to pick up where we've left off. Thank you again for joining today's event, and the American Legion looks forward to continuing this conversation in 2021 and beyond. Now it's time to kick off the next portion of today's launch. To get us started with our panel remarks that will be focused on each of the individual report chapters, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Keith Boring, Director for the Navy's Credentialing Programs. Mr. Boring co-chaired the MCAI Roundtables, along with Jennifer Worth, Senior Vice President, Workforce and Economic Development for the American Association of Community Colleges. Mr. Boring, I know I just shared that today's panel remarks will focus on each of the chapters within the report. However, as the Department of Defense representative for the MCAI Report Project, can you please take a few minutes to share an overview of your role in the MCAI Roundtables as the DoD representative, along with why you believe DoD was invested in the creation of the MCAI Project? And then finally, how will DoD use the MCAI report to inform their work in the academic and non-academic credentialing space moving forward? Mr. Boring?
Great, thank you, Lauren. Excellent questions. So my role in the MCAI Roundtables was to facilitate and focus discussions relating to the service member, their challenges in attaining credentials, and the value of service members and veterans in the civilian sector. So pretty much my role was to be an advocate for the service member and the veteran. Now to address why is the DoD invested in the MCAI project, which is credentialing of our workforce? Well, the DoD is keenly aware of the value of in-service and post-service industry certifications, licenses, academic degrees and certificates, and apprenticeships. So while in service, credentialing plays a key role in our workforce professionalization and our force readiness. And then post-service, credentialing provides a means for the veteran to attain careers that have value to the individual as well as society. Since all service members, we all know that service members eventually have to leave the service sooner or later, the DoD remains dedicated in providing credentialing opportunities while in service, which we know will greatly assist in fulfilling the service members' post-service needs. And with the MCAI project, the DoD is also very much interested in initiatives that facilitate the acceptance of military occupational work, training, experience towards these civilian credentials, in order that the service member doesn't have to repeat or duplicate the same work that they've already proven within the military, the work, the training, the experience. We don't want them to repeat it just to attain the credential that they already have proven experience. We want to be able to get that sharing of the data so they can reach that credential much sooner. Now, how we're using the MCAI report, within the DoD, it reinforces what the DoD has been doing, and that we're on the right track and pathway, and we have the correct mindset. But it also helps us to make sure that we stay focused on the service member and the veteran, all while meeting the national defense mission. And we want to make sure that we're assisting our post-service veterans so they can get those great careers and meet those civilian and industry needs. So socializing the MCAI report reinforces that we all, and that means, when I say all, I mean military, industry, academia, employers, all of us, we can and should be doing more to leverage the military members' competencies towards their civilian credentials, jobs, and industry needs. So I hope that answers your 3 questions, Lauren. Back to you.
Keith, thank you again. That was perfect. We really appreciate you joining us today to launch the report and for sharing such important remarks on behalf of the Department of Defense. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to be joined by Ms. Elizabeth Belcaster and Mr. Rick Passarelli. Liz and Rick both served as MCAI ambassadors for the report. So good afternoon to you both. I'd love for you to take some time over the next few minutes to share with attendees this afternoon a highlight of Chapter 1, Public-Private Partnerships.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this historic event. My name is Rick Passarelli, and I'm a United States Navy veteran and a National Director of Veterans Affairs and Workforce Development for the Utility Workers Union of America, as well as the AFL-CIO's Union Veterans Council Workforce Development Chair. Today, we're going to talk about the workstream public-private partnerships, its value, and identify some sample partnerships that are identified within the MCAI report. So some key report findings are public-private partnerships are a critical component to ensuring military service members have access to programs as well as designed to address existing skill gaps and connect them with the new education and employment pathways that support their effective transition into civilian communities. We also found in the context of credentialing, a variety of public-private partnership programs have been created with specific goals in mind. One is to evaluate the service member's military training to identify any skill gaps that may exist in relation to earning a civilian recognized credential. 2 was to offer training and education opportunities to the service members to acquire those skills prior to their separation and also improve their options for obtaining gainful employment. The 3rd one was, regardless of their specific military occupational training, to connect service members to new career opportunities in high demand fields that lead to all economic mobility for themselves and their families. These partnership successes can be attributed to the adoption of several key practices that we have found that have proven to be critical in establishing robust public-private partnerships. Not only am I a MCAI ambassador, but I've also been witness to a public-private partnership with the help of the City Colleges of Chicago, People's Gas, as we trained and placed over 700 veterans in the utility industry. I highly encourage you to utilize these tool sets. Number 1, identifying a catalyst for creating the partnership. A strong partnership is born out of the need to address an actual problem that currently exists within the military and civilian community. This involves a variety of stakeholders. Define partnership roles and responsibilities. Once the problem to be addressed has been clearly identified, it's important to consider who should have a seat at the table to fully address the identified issues and goals of the partnership. Relevant stakeholders should be selected, and then appropriate subject matter experts within each group should be identified. This will create a balanced representation of stakeholder groups, content experts, as well as decision makers that are critical to the component of the program, and every expert who holds power to enact change. These roles and responsibilities of each partner should be clearly identified. Identifying partnership leads to facilitate effective communication and ensure deadlines and timelines are adhered to, having 1 or 2 individuals that create guiding the group to create more provisions within the group itself has also benefits of sub-leads who can be identified for discrete components of the partnership, especially if the group determines that a subset of the work group may be needed to address these specific items related to its overall partnership goals. Department of Defense involvement. The DoD is a critical role player and partner that must be included in the process and given a seat at the table to make sure that their voices are ensured and leveraged and delivers with on par necessary for the success of the overall program. Without the inclusion of the military and their perspective, any work being done may jeopardize the partnership and may be in vain. Specified meeting cadence and defined work plans. Decisions should be made to determine how and when to convene. Experts to efficiently use everyone's time and not compete with other priorities. Identifying goals and timelines of deliverables can determine whether smaller work groups are needed or when meeting with larger groups is even necessary, and how often they need to meet to address the identified problems. Clearly articulate your goals and success measures. Define and formalize the primary goal. Clearly articulate what successes look like. Setting these reasonable expectations will ensure partner accountability and maintain transparency, and will be keys to successful working relationships moving forward. Confirm sustainability. It is very important to determine in advance the sustainability of the partnership. Is this group brought together only to address a singular problem and issue and then dispense, or is it a partnership that requires longevity tasked with future goals? Knowing the long-term outlook can identify expectations, determine timelines, and confirm how best to utilize the skills and expertise of those involved. I now would like to introduce my colleague, Elizabeth Belcaster, and she's going to highlight the report's successful models. Liz?
Thank you, Rick. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. MCAI ambassadors identified examples of public-private partnerships and the resulting programs that illustrate one or more of the key components that Rick just shared. The report highlights a number of partnerships, one of which is the IBT, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Military Assistance Program, otherwise known as TMAP. TMAP was created as a response to hiring needs for the transportation industry and a widespread of veteran unemployment in 2010. The program afforded the military-connected community the opportunity to obtain necessary training recognized by employers and states and regulators along with the required CDL license. The TMAP ABF Career Skills Program launched in January of 2015. TMAP's continued success can be attributed to the commitments of each organization and what they bring to the table. As evidence during the COVID-19 pandemic, in a time of crisis, these commitments allowed each partner to be responsive and efficient, leveraging resources and adapting the program model to avoid as much interruption to the service member as possible. The opportunities for action. For the industry stakeholders on today's call, specifically, your immediate opportunity for action is to consider participation in the DoD SkillBridge program. DoD SkillBridge is also recognized as a model in the reports. As DoD continues to expand training and employment programs for separating service members, employers should consider becoming SkillBridge industry partners. More information about SkillBridge is provided in the report, along with a more complete list of ways industries, employers can continue to support service members and veterans in increasing their credential attainment. Thank you.
Liz and Rick, thank you again for not only sharing your highlights of Chapter 1, but also for your continued support of the overall MCAI project. Next up, we have Ms. Esmeralda Silva. Esmeralda currently serves as the president of the Council of College and Military Educators and was a tremendous asset to the MCAI roundtables. Esmeralda, can you please share some highlights of Chapter 2, Recognition of Learning and Stackable Credentials?
Lauren, thank you so much for the introduction. As Lauren stated, my name is Esmeralda Silva, the current president of CCME, the Council of College of Military Educators, and I'm going to outline some of the key findings from theme recognition of learning and stackable credentials. Key report findings: formal and informal learning acquired throughout the life cycle of an individual has a value and should be counted towards academic and non-academic credentials, future education, and sustainable employment opportunities. In the simplest terms, recognition of learning means all learning should count towards the attainment of a credential. The programs highlighted throughout the report provide an opportunity for service members and veterans to increase their credential attainment because the partners leading the work recognition validate and value the training and education from the military. These programs also support the development of new skills using industry-informed training in careers that provide opportunity for growth throughout an individual's employment life cycle. Let's take that just one step further. Many of these programs offer stackable credential pathways. The definition of stackable credential models is a bit different depending on the context. Based on the Department of Labor definition of stackable credential, it is a sequence of credentials that can be accumulated over the time to increase qualifications of an individual to move along a career pathway or up the career ladder. Stackable credential models are often the result of successfully executed public and private partnerships, as stated by Rick and Liz in the previous theme. Key themes, recognition of learning and stackability. The report identifies 9 key themes that cross over the program that are deemed worthy of replication. I'm not going to go through all those 9 themes, but I am going to focus on a few of the critical themes that we feel are very relevant. First, utilizing a common language to describe the learning skills, competencies the learner has obtained. The expression of military learning in terms of competency promotes transparency behind military training, increasing access to credential pathways during service and after separation. The credential transparency description language, known as CTDL, is one of the examples of common language or vocabulary comprised of more easily understood terms, allowing an increase in the usefulness of this information by a variety of credential providers and stakeholders. Presenting information in a universally recognized and accessible language facilitates the recognition of prior learning, to open additional training opportunities, and to articulate the skills needed for a specific job clearly. Secondarily, another theme, crosswalk military occupations and education to civilian credential paths to eliminate the need of our service members and veterans to retrain, requalify, or duplicate efforts. When conducting a crosswalk, look at examples and models currently being utilized that map the civilian credential in high demand career fields and lead to economical mobility. Several successful modeled programs were identified as part of the MCAI report in the efforts. Thirdly, think beyond credential completion. Incorporating additional advising on how military service has prepared the individual for a variety of credential pathways that must align with their skill sets and their interests. Successful models, which I will point out a few of those successful models. The MCAI ambassadors identified quite a few programs as strong examples of stackable credentials, along with implementation of the elements of recognition of prior learning that creates a positive outcome for our transitioning service members and our veterans. One of those examples is Davenport University. In the report, we will share some of the approach that Davenport took. One of their approach was really creating paths to credentials that maximize the number of direct credit award for military-based learning by conducting a competency-based evaluation utilizing military occupation skills data in its entirety. To improve on existing models, they began with evaluating military credit within the registrar's office rather than having it at each department that makes a determination. They also hired a military-connected expert to support the registrar's office with translating military education and experience, and to drive efforts to obtain clarifying information from the proper military service when needed. So those are 2 key models really looking at, and again, within the report, you will also see additional models, but an opportunity for action moving forward is speaking to the examples that I just shared. If academic stakeholders present on today's call are could be encouraged to take a holistic approach in review to military-based education, training, and experience, and determine how they can implement that across core degree requirements or recognize direct credit towards degree requirements for the completion of an academic pathway is critical in developing a successful model. Lauren, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of the models and key themes found throughout the report. I would also like to just take a moment to thank American Legion, Lumina Foundation, and all the ambassadors that worked on this project. And I look forward to being able to move forward and make additional progress to support our military communities.
Thank you. Esmeralda, we always appreciate your support of this project, and your remarks this afternoon were wonderful. So thank you for highlighting some of what can be found in Chapter 2. I'm now joined by another MCAI ambassador, Mr. Sam Whitehurst. Hi, Sam. Can you please take the next few minutes to share the Chapter 3 Tools and Resources highlight reel with our attendees today?
No, absolutely. And thanks, Lauren. Once again, my name is Colonel Retired Sam Whitehurst. I'm the Vice President of Programs and Services at Dixon Center for Military and Veteran Services. And I would just as Esmeralda just did, I would like to echo my thanks to the American Legion and to the Lumina Foundation for allowing us to be part of this very, very important work. You know, we started this before the pandemic, but then it was incredibly important. But we've discovered as we've gone through the pandemic and in the last several months, it's become even more important as we're looking at some of the figures when it comes to unemployment for veterans and transitioning service members, and also the continuing issue of underemployment. And so this work is all geared to help tackle both of those particular issues. So like I said, this is a perfect time to be having this very important discussion. I'm also going to build on what Esmeralda said about some of the challenges with establishing a common language when it comes to learning. So as part of our work, as part of the MCAI Roundtable, we took a look at that challenge that many, not only service members and veterans face, but really other organizations, academic institutions and employers, and really taking the skills, the experience, and the knowledge that a military member had gained as part of their service, and then translating that into skills or credit toward a degree or a certification or a license or again toward a pathway toward civilian employment. So we took a look at that challenge, and I'll encourage everyone to go and read the report to really dig into some of the underlying challenges and issues that come as part of that. And as you can see here on this slide, we did break it down around 3 areas. We looked at the common language and coming up with related data standards. You know, for example, you know, there's a challenge there just in the data that we all gather and develop to describe what some of those skills and experiences look like. A lot of times that data is not easily shared among different organizations, whether that's outside of, whether it's within the Department of Defense or outside of the Department of Defense, or being able to share that among other stakeholders who work in this space. We also took a look at the different frameworks and how you classify that data in order so a service member or a veteran can take a look at what they've done and then be able to match that to a particular career field. And then lastly, we took a look at some of the translation tools and articulation portals that are currently available right now to serve not only our service members and veterans, but also to serve institutions that support service members and their families. And veterans. I encourage everyone, again, to go back and look at the report and really start to dig into each of these different issues. But before I go, I do want to highlight 2 of the translation tools or articulation portals that we looked at as part of our work. The first one is the Lockheed Martin Military Translator, Military Skill Translator. This is a platform, it's a great example of a translation tool. This is a platform that takes a service member's occupational specialty or their job title, and it's able to take that and link it in real time to openings and positions there at Lockheed Martin. So it's a very effective tool for a service member or a veteran to see what's available. And it's also very effective for the employer as they are making sure they're matching up the right person with the right position. And another example, and this is an example of a great articulation portal, is MilGears. So MilGears is a program initially developed by the U.S. Navy, and it's a program that is linked to credentialing online opportunities. Many of you here as part of this webinar are familiar with the acronym COOL, but it's linked to COOL. And not only does MilGears help translate the skills and the experiences that a service member has had while on active duty, it also really helps that service member see what career fields and what credentials are available to them as they continue to work toward whether it's a degree, a certification, and a license, or maybe as they're looking or looking toward employment as well. So I encourage everyone, again, those just are two of the tools and resources we identified. There are many others as part of the report. And so I encourage all of our different stakeholders out there to go and look at the report and look at those additional tools and resources. Because as we all know, we're going to continue to see improvements in these tools as technology continues to evolve and advance. But all of these are a great starting point to really build upon as we continue to look at advances in this particular area. So once again, thanks to American Legion and to Lumina. And Lauren, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Sam. I know it must have been very difficult to synthesize all of that great information in Chapter 3 into a short 5-minute overview. And we do keep referencing the report, which will come out this Friday. So as soon as it comes out, get in there, dig in, and hopefully the information in Chapter 3 will be very useful to you in your current journey to continue to increase credential attainment. Okay, now John Kamen will be joining me. He's going to share some great information regarding the chapter on federal and state legislation and policy. There's no one better really to share that level of information. So John, can you please share a few highlights of this chapter with our guests today?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Lauren, for the great work you've been doing, and good afternoon, everyone. And we felt it was important in this report to talk about the trend lines we've seen in legislation over the past, really not just 4 years, but going back 10 years, when it's come to the rise of recognizing military credentialing as an opportunity for employers to create crosswalks. And but I mentioned 4 years specifically because I want to talk about the rise of non-traditional education and where we see credentials play a role in that. And primarily, there are 3 areas that we're going to be exploring when it comes to legislation. First is establishing the credentialing programs and policies. Second, enabling better recognition of training and experience through the assessment of military training. And then finally, ensuring the quality of credentials. Now, in terms of where we've seen credentialing programs develop, I prefer going back to 2017 Executive Order 13801, which allows DoD, the Department of Labor, to propose regulations to promote industry-recognized apprenticeship programs, IRAPs, to expand access to apprenticeships, which we've seen. And then just last year in the NDAA FY 2020, excuse me, Section 562 authorized federal government participation in the Skill Bridge program. And we talk about Skill Bridge a lot, but it's a great example of DoD doing something so well that the federal government says, wait, we want to get involved with that too. And then finally, we have the development and just the unexpected rapid success of the Harry W. Comrie Act's Vet Tech program, which was a 5-year program initially conceived in 2018 to enroll veterans in high technology programs of education that were sought by employers. And every year it comes up, it gets almost completely, the funds get spent almost immediately with all the applicants that receive it. And this isn't in the report because it just happened last week, but to put on everybody's radar, in the budget reconciliation package, $400 million was set aside to create a new rapid retraining program for veterans that is likely going to be in the mold of the Veterans Retraining and Assistance Program from about 6 years ago. But that's something to pay attention to as the VA develops it. And secondly, the second part of this was establishing better recognition of training experience through the assessment of military training. So how can you legislate something like that? We talk about 3 different subcategories here. The first is creating a formal prior learning assessment for licensing, certifications, and awarding college credit. And the report will go deep into what these PLAs, as we call them, prior learning assessments, mean and what kind of the state's roles are. But second is something I want everyone to pay attention to, which happened again through the NDAA, this one fiscal year 2018. Section 542, again for FY18, enables DoD to establish a database to record all training performed by members of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps that may have application to employment in the civilian sector for use by states and other entities to satisfy licensing or certification requirements. Now, a special props need to be made to the Army on this because they've led the way to provide online access to unclassified training materials. On the other hand, for other services, if institutions want that information, they may need to go through FOIA requests to get them processing. And lastly, in this recognition, we need to acknowledge that 31 states since 2016 have passed legislation related to awarding credit for prior learning. Now, the most successful legislation supporting this issue has focused on creating consistent frameworks and requirements for performing the assessment. And to flag states that have done some special work on this, Michigan, Texas, Louisiana, and Washington have passed legislation that directs institutions to develop academic credit policies for prior military-based learning. And finally, we have ensuring the quality of credentials. Now, this is tough, as we all know, because there's not a single accepted definition of what constitutes the quality of a credential or the quality of it, which is interchangeably used with the value of credential. We don't have as much as higher education does in terms of that. But we've discovered, we talk about in the report how the GI Bill will lead the way in this. Number one, because GI Bill applies not only to Title IV higher education, but to credentialing programs. And in the Johnny Isaacson and David Rowe bill that we passed at the end of 2020, we are going to be, the VA is going to be doing oversight of approved programs through a new system of risk-based surveys that's going to be built on public data, state agencies, and for the first time, we believe this has the potential to target the riskiest programs, regardless of whether they're Title IV or not, and streamline access to the good programs. So these are all exciting things we have going on in terms of the developments, and we are certainly seeing the continued rise of these programs. So thank you, and Lauren, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that perspective. So we're going to transition into our final panelist, which is the wonderful Dr. Terrell Odom. Terrell, you've been asked to share a few key points included within the chapter on research, and can you please do us that honor this afternoon?
Absolutely, Lauren. And again, first I want to start by thanking the Legion, Lumina Foundation, and my fellow ambassadors for doing such great work on this much needed topic of assisting our heroes as they make that transition from active service. Again, I'm Terrell Odom. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I've worked in higher education for over the past 15 years, specifically working with transitioning service members, veterans, and their families at 2- and 4-year college and universities, trade schools, and now leading the Office for Military Affiliated Communities at the University of Chicago. I'm honored to have worked with Rick and Liz with programs such as the UMAP program, where we're able to successfully transition over 700 veterans into careers in the gas utility field, many of them receiving several stackable credentials and degrees upon completion of the program and as they made that transition into the workforce. Today, I want to discuss with you the importance of research and emerging issues surrounding transition and active duty service member. In recent years, the post-high school credential ecosystem has put more of a focus on exploring how to increase credential attainment effectively and efficiently for underrepresented student populations on campus. Part of this focus includes re-engaging adult learners interested in pursuing next credential on their pathway, or in some instances, even completing the first credential they may have started years prior. As the pedagogical shift moves from traditional higher education and the resulting degree serving as the golden ticket For gainful employment and continued economic mobility, industry and employers have signaled a greater interest in understanding how to evaluate, recognize, and validate non-traditional training and education, i.e. anything that's outside of the traditional higher education, to meet their hiring needs. Credential stakeholders have widely shared their desire to increase credential attainment for service members and veterans without requiring them to start over. These stakeholders continue to seek out evidence-based guidelines and processes that others within the credentialing ecosystem have successfully deployed to connect these individuals more efficiently to a pathway that adequately recognizes their technical skill set. While the MCAI ambassadors were not tasked specifically with conducting an extensive literature review for this project, the research summarized within the report and the organizations we recommend the readers keep an eye out for future research connected to this topic did inform each roundtable discussion. While a variety of research topics were worthy of discussion, a few rose to the top related to the advancing military credential initiatives and are highlighted within the body of the report. Competency-based education, recognition and validation of non-traditional learning, non-degree credential attainment, veteran employment and underemployment, military to civilian transition support. MCAI ambassadors curated the list below with the goal of encouraging cross-sector partners to come together and conduct research to further inform and promising principles, guidelines that continue to facilitate increased credential attainment of service members and veterans. Some of these questions that came up for this: do service members and veterans entering competency-based education and training programs see a higher rate of return for their military-based education and training? What questions do faculty continue to struggle with answering related to translated military education and experience to degree pathways? What additional tools and resources can be provided to assist in this effort? How state initiatives to recognize military training and experience for state licensure result in desired outcomes? What barriers exist to assessing the equivalency of military training and experience? And how can the Department of Defense better support service member transition into civilian employment? At what point within that military life cycle model should the DoD help service members to engage in their civilian career pathways without negatively impacting retention? There are several opportunities for action based on the research in which you guys get an opportunity to read the report on Friday. But I want to highlight of utmost importance, and this is a theme that cuts across each research topic and broadening our understanding of how service members and veterans of color are impacted by programs and initiatives focused on increasing credential attainment. In the absence of disaggregated data by race and ethnicity, we have an incomplete representation of the experiences and opportunities available. Therefore, future research must continue to disaggregate data by race and ethnicity so that all of our credentialing stakeholders and partners appropriately address the gaps that may exist with the current policies and practices. Again, I just want to go back and re-highlight my thanks to the Lumina Foundation, to the Legion, to the Department of Defense, and all the ambassadors on the call for the great work on this report. This is going to be a phenomenal guideline to be able to use to help transition our heroes into their civilian careers once they leave military service. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Terrell. Thank you for your support as the MCAI ambassador and all of your contributions to this project, along with the remarks that you shared today. And I really like that we ended it on the discussion of disaggregated data by race and ethnicity, because we need to start getting to a better and more complete picture of how service members and veterans interact with these programs based upon their race and ethnicity. We know that different groups require different support, and in order to be truly equitable, we need to be taking all of those considerations as we make these programs and policies. So that concludes the panel sessions highlighting each of the chapters that appear within the report. It's my pleasure to welcome back Mr. John Kamen. He's going to share some final remarks and more detail on how each of you on today's call can access the report in its entirety, along with how you can continue to stay involved in the Military Credentialing Advancement Initiative in 2021 and beyond. John, the proverbial stage is yours.
Thank you, Lauren. And again, reiterating the thanks to the ambassadors who really put this work together, because this expertise is not internal to the American Legion when it comes to what's going on the ground at schools, at the Department of Defense, and at employers. But this talk does remind me of an incident I had when I graduated college. I went to a military hiring fair at an accounting firm, and I remember seeing a video where of one of their employees saying, after graduating the Naval Academy and serving for 8 years as a Navy SEAL, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to the civilian world. And looking at that video and my background as a Army specialist, field artilleryman, I realized that whatever it is they were looking for from the military, whatever way they had of expressing their support for hiring military veterans, that wasn't me. As a matter of fact, the status quo had existed for decades, if not centuries, of hiring pipeline for the elite of the military and the exclusion of those lower enlisted. And it's not out of intent, it's out of the facts they have. They didn't know what skills I brought or what the lower enlisted brought in their training. And that's, I think, what the work is about bridging that gap between the dedication and the training and the perseverance that our veterans bring from the military and changing the dialogue and disrupting what the status quo is going to be our continued task to build on. And we're proud of the report in its density. And because of how large it is, we will continuing to be hosting events through the year to discuss individual portions. So for those on the call, we really appreciate you being a part, and you will be the first to not only receive the report, but further issues that will be discussed over the course of the year. So again, thank you for everyone. And a special thanks to Lumina, who really was able to align with us on building this report and coming together to discuss these equitable solutions. So with that, Lauren, I will return it back to you and thank everyone for, again, being a part of this.
Thank you, John. Yes, we're so very thrilled all of you decided to join us this afternoon so that we can highlight some of the report. It's been 18 months of work to pull all of these great recommendations and information together. We hope you enjoy reading it. Come Friday, you will receive an email with the recording of today's webinar and the report. Amplify, 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 share it with your networks. Let us know if you have any questions. There will be future events, to John's point, that you can get engaged with. And to my original point that I said much earlier in today's session, this is just the beginning. The work in the report is a foundation. Take it, build upon it, and we are here to support you in any way that we can. Thank you so much. We look forward to you reading the future of credentialing of service members and veterans, leveraging partners, policies, and resources. And thank you again for joining us this afternoon.